County Executive Bellone, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you. So you are calling for some overhauls to county boards of elections, which I think that we can decidedly say this year the state election system is far from perfect. But you want to focus specifically on how the county boards of elections can sometimes be controlled by the major political parties in New York. So tell me what you mean by that and how does that work now, I guess?
I think what we're fundamentally talking about here is at the heart of our democracy, our elections, and at a national level where you are seeing people across the country, tens of millions of people who are questioning whether the election was run properly and appropriately. That's a real danger to our democracy. And I think we have an obligation to do everything that we can to convey to the public that these elections are run as efficiently, effectively, and with complete integrity as much as possible. And what we saw in this past election was people waiting online for hours and hours at a time during early voting. You had, even during election day, long lines. I waited about an hour and a half, a little more than that, at my polling place. And those things should not happen, and they undermine people's faith in the process. So I think very important moving forward, we need to convey that these are professionally run agencies, that they're merit-based, and that, quite frankly, everyone has an opportunity to get a position at the Board of Elections that's qualified and is a patriotic citizen and wants to do a good job in something that's critical to our democracy.
So right now, just for context, I want you to explain what's happening now in these county boards of elections, because what we see all too often is some political parties may insert people into them as, I don't want to say a favor, but they're connected. That's how it is. And what you're saying is you want your everyday person off the street to be able to apply for these jobs and work at these boards of elections instead of these people being handpicked by the parties.
Well, there's a strong argument for what is in the state constitution, which is that the parties each have a role to play in the Board of Elections, so that the two major parties, there are people who argue it the other way, but there is a strong argument to be made for why that is important, that both parties have an equal say in what's happening at our local boards of elections. But what I'm talking about are the people who work at the Board of Elections. There's no reason that we have agencies all across our country, intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies, where it doesn't matter what political party you're in. It's, are you there to do the job? Are you professional? Are you meeting certain qualifications and standards? And that's what we need to do when we're talking about our elections, because it is critical that people have full faith and confidence in our election system. And this election, I think, has demonstrated how important that really is.
So you talked a little bit earlier about waiting online for hours in early voting and on election day for some voters. Are we at a point where boards of elections across New York State just need more money to do all this? I know there was this big problem in Manhattan where there just weren't enough early voting sites. And in the next election cycles, we hopefully won't have as many people voting absentee. So we could see those lines get longer if there's the same voter turnout. Do boards of elections need more money?
Well, I think that is part of it. And it's also why it's important that people have confidence that these are agencies that are merit-based. As you're putting more resources and more tax dollars into agencies, the public needs to know that these agencies are being run efficiently and effectively. And think about what happened, Dan, here in this election. You had people waiting online for 4 hours or more in Suffolk County, which is really unconscionable. And then when they got into the polling place and were handed their ballot, they found more than half of the races on the ballot had already been pre-decided for them. The judicial races, where effectively the circle was already colored in for them because there was only one person on the ballot on multiple lines. And, when there is so much focus on our democracy and making sure that it works, and I think everyone across the country, so many people around the state are concerned about that. Again, that issue, the fact that people didn't have a choice in more than half the races after waiting online for 4 hours, just is not sustainable. We need we need reform. We need to change this.
So this conversation about party control, partisan control in counties also trickles down to judgeships. And we know all too well in New York State that political parties often handpick candidates for a judge so they don't have any competition. It kind of takes the opportunity away from voters. You want to see that changed, and this is a very controversial conversation in the legal community. Maybe not for everyday voters, but it's very important because this is an entire branch of government we're talking about. Tell me what kind of changes you'd like to see in selecting judges in New York State.
Well, that's exactly right, Dan. This is our third branch of government, and it is vitally important. You know, we dealt with a lot of corruption issues here in this county. We've talked about that, where we had a district attorney who was indicted for abuse of power. You had corruption that was disproportionately impacting communities of color, particularly black males, at the highest level of law enforcement under District Attorney Tom Spoda. And what is a check on that kind of corruption, that kind of abuse of power? It is an independent judiciary. And when the judiciary is selected in the exact same political process that the district attorney is selected in, and you have a lot of those issues, that becomes a problem. The judiciary at the state level deals with 95% of the cases that exist in our country. And it's a lot of kitchen book table issues. It's people going to surrogates court to deal with estates when there's been a death in the family court issues, businesses, small businesses that have some sort of dispute. They need to know with 100% confidence that they have an independent judiciary. We have some fine judges out there, but the system currently, the way we select when voters have no choice, is not working, and it needs to be reformed.
So it's obviously, as I said, a very controversial conversation for people in the legal community. I'm wondering what you think about the legislature's action on this, because it would obviously take some action from the legislature to decide how judges are going to be selected. Do you think that we see some movement in a legislature that's full of attorneys?
Well, yes, and I'm an attorney as well, although my wife jokes that I'm a fake attorney. She says I've never made any money from being an attorney. Yeah, that's very important. I think, again, we do have leadership that understands the importance of these democracy issues, reforming and making sure that people have full trust and faith in the democracy. So I think we are seeing movement on that issue. Judicial selection reform is not something that people have talked about a lot, but if you really want to do criminal justice reform, if you want to create full equity in our system here, you cannot do it without making sure that you have a judicial selection process that is transparent, out in the open, that is intended to bring the best and the brightest into the system, and not one that is done in the shadows, in the back rooms. That can't happen anymore moving forward. There is too much at stake with respect to our democracy.
Well, as we were talking before, it's kind of a pet issue for me, so it's something that I am going to be keeping my eye on in the coming months, especially when the legislature comes back and maybe they start having those conversations about the boards of elections and the judiciary. So we'll be back on this topic sometime soon. Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be with you.